I'm ready. Hey guys, Merry Christmas. Um, I there's several things I'd like to talk about. There's a lot that's happened today. I just came from a spirited luncheon meeting with my Senate Republican colleagues and the Vice President, talking about the President's decision in Syria. I think the other issue on the table is whether there's going to be a government shutdown. Short answer is I don't know yet, but I'll be glad to elaborate on that. At some point, I'd like to make a few comments about the so-called criminal justice bill, but I'll just start, if it's okay with you, by saying what's on your mind.
Harrison?
All right, Senator, thank you for your time, firstly. Secondly, yes, as far as this criminal justice reform package, 87 senators in support, 12 in opposition. You made your case on the floor before that vote yesterday, calling the whole process backwards.
Right.
But, I mean, given obviously this support, and by all indications it seems like this is going to pass. If it were to pass and become the law of the land federally, in your view, what happens?
Well, I think it is going to become law, and I hope that I'm wrong and the proponents of the bill are right. There are fair-minded, well-intentioned people on both sides of the issue. I don't think there's anybody in the United States Senate that would do anything to endanger public safety. But I have to make the call based on what's in the bill. The Democrats have contended, and frankly, some members of the news media incorrectly have contended that this bill only impacts nonviolent, minor drug users. You know, the guy that might be caught smoking a joint. That's not true. This bill will make eligible child molesters, bank robbers, carjackers, people who assault a law enforcement officer, and I could keep going on and on and on. It would allow them to go free solely because some bureaucrat in the Bureau of Prisons says they're nonviolent. I've seen this movie before at the state level. Governor Edwards released about 2,000 people 14 months ago. No anti-recidivist training at all. No counseling, no nothing. Turned them loose. He said, don't worry, they're nonviolent. Somebody forgot to tell the criminals he turned loose because they've been very violent. I certainly don't want to see that happen at the federal level. But the die was cast for me yesterday when we were having lunch, the Republican senators I'm referring to, and one simple question was asked by a senator of the proponents of the bill. The senator said, answer me yes or no. Will this bill allow child molesters to be released from prison early with the okay of a bureaucrat from the Department of our Department of Corrections? And the answer was yes. And that sealed it for me. I've approached this issue a little differently than some of my colleagues. I believe that the primary purpose of a penal system is justice. That doesn't mean that other goals aren't important. Deterrence, rehabilitation, in some instances atonement and retribution. They're all important goals, but the most important goal in a Western society, in my opinion, of a penal system is justice. Justice for me exists when people receive what they deserve, their just desserts. I used this example on the floor of the Senate. In my opinion, justice exists when the people of Tibet are allowed to worship the Dalai Lama because they deserve religious freedom. Justice exists when a man who rapes a small boy receives a sentence and serves it proportional to the crime. I didn't say that, and by that I mean justice exists when people receive what they deserve. C.S. Lewis said it in a wonderful essay called The Humanitarian Theory of Punishment. Before him, Immanuel Kant said it. He said our penal laws are a moral imperative. Before that, St. Augustine said it. Had my colleagues said, look, we're going to debate the sentencing laws in the United States and decide whether we think they're just or not, I would have pounced on that like a ninja. I would stay here all day, all night, and do it through Christmas and New Year's. But that's not what they did. That's not what they wanted to do. They said, we're going to assume that our sentences are unjust without any proof, and we're going to give unfettered discretion to the bureaucracy, the federal bureaucracy, to decide who gets released early. And don't worry, they're all nonviolent. And then everybody read the bill. And they're not nonviolent. I don't consider a person who rapes a child to be nonviolent. And that's why I voted against the bill. Some of my colleagues, particularly my Democratic friends, believe that criminals are just sick. They're mixed up, they're confused, their mama didn't love them enough or their daddy didn't love them enough. That may be true for some, but I think unfortunately, if I make it to heaven, I'm going to ask why. There are people in this world who aren't mixed up or confused or sick, or it's not the case that mom or dad didn't love them enough, they're just bad, and that's why we have prisons. And I'm not going to support letting those people endanger the public anymore. I believe in second chances, but I don't believe in giving somebody nonviolent a second chance to be violent again. I hope I'm wrong in all of this, but that's how I see it.
Melinda?
Yeah, I got a letter, by the way. I'll give you a concrete example. We talk in terms of concepts. I got a letter a few weeks ago from the father of a young man who just graduated from high school. He was hit head-on by a drunk driver going the wrong way down the highway in Iberia Parish. Killed his son. Just finished high school. The drunk driver received 15 years. There's a state statute that allows, or says rather, that the drunk driver had to serve at least 5 years. Governor Edwards' Department of Corrections let him out after 18 months, said he was nonviolent. I don't consider that justice.
Melinda?
Hi.
Hey, Melinda, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Pay your taxes, okay?
It's not going to be enough, I promise.
Every little bit helps.
In terms of the same topic, are you reaching out to the White House to advocate for a veto of the bill or some sort of
no? I've
response
talked
at the Bureau of Prisons?
I'm sorry. I've talked to the president. He's not going to veto the bill. He supports the bill. We just respectfully disagree. Senator Cotton and I had two amendments. Really, I had two and he had one. Tom had an amendment that would have prevented child molesters and others from being eligible for early release, no matter what the bureaucrats said. We got, all the Democrats voted against it. We got most Republican votes, but we didn't get enough to pass the amendment. I had an amendment that said that every quarter the Bureau of Prisons has to tell the American people who they've let loose and publish their rap sheet and tell the American people whether they've been rearrested. We got most of the Republicans on that, but we didn't get any Democrats, so that was defeated. The amendment I had that I was most disappointed with respect to was a victim notification. It would have required the director of the Bureau of Prisons, before he releases one of these criminals, to call the criminal's victim. Tell the victim, I'm going to release this criminal. I'm going to give the victim a date and allow the victim to weigh in and write a statement, and it would require the director to read the statement. Wouldn't require the director to follow the statement, and it wouldn't give the victim veto. I just couldn't imagine that people would object to having the director, or requiring the director of the Bureau of Prisons to call a woman who's been raped to tell her that the rapist is about to be released and here's the date, and would you care to offer an opinion? But we got no Democratic support on that. I think I got a majority of the Republican senators, but I didn't get all of them. And but I don't think the president is going to veto the bill. He was under, well, the president can speak for himself. This is one he and I just disagree on.
Greg?
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Senator. How are you? Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you too, man.
So, have either of the Republican candidates that have announced for next year's governor's race reached out to you and sought your support, and have you committed to support either of the candidates yet, or will you?
Second question first. I'm not committed to support anybody. I'm not completely certain that the field's set. I'm not suggesting, and don't want you to read into that I know of somebody else that might run. I don't. But as we've talked about before, I think competition makes all of us better, and it's a moral good. I haven't talked to Eddie Risponi. He didn't call me, and I haven't talked to him. Eddie's a great guy. I have talked to Ralph. Ralph called me before he made his announcement, and we talked a little bit about the race, and I told him, look, go get them. You're going to have all kind of experts telling you, why you can't do it. Just ignore them. None of them have ever run a race in their natural lives. I didn't tell him to ignore you, Greg. And I just said, look, don't worry about what they say about you. Just go for it, man. If you really feel strongly about it. And I've known Ralph a long time. I've known Eddie a long time. I like them both. They're both smart guys, committed, honest. My attitude is, frankly, we got nowhere to go but up. My feelings about Governor Edwards. It's not personal. I just think he's driven Louisiana into a ditch. I did notice. I do want to be fair here. I've hammered the governor pretty hard about starting to check eligibility for Medicaid and using federal data to do that. I see where the secretary, not the new secretary, the secretary has decided to do that, and I want to thank her. I wish she'd done it before she took 85 million taxpayer dollars and threw them in the dirt, but I guess it's better late than never. But
you hadn't made a decision on who you might support, Senator?
No, I haven't. and I haven't. Look, Greg, you followed these races. I mean, the races generally don't start. A governor's race doesn't generally start until, I don't know, 6 months out, 7 months out. In terms of setting up your organization up and raising the money, I think I know some have started earlier, but I think in most cases people start January of the year of the election. Sometimes they start earlier. And I think it'll be a very competitive race. And I hope the best person wins. And right now, of the three major candidates running, there could be some others I don't know about. Either Eddie or Ralph would, in my opinion, do a much better job for the people in Louisiana than John Bell.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stephen Maxwell.
Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Senator. How you doing?
Good, man.
Good. My question about Syria. A lot of Republican senators are criticizing the president over his decision. Senator Graham calling it an Obama-like mistake. What is your stance on this?
I'm not trying to dodge your question. I honestly don't know yet. I like my colleagues, I was caught off guard this morning. I found out on it when I was doing an interview on CNN, and they asked me about it, and I said, I'm sorry. I got to get back to you about that one. We had lunch today. We meaning the Republican senators, we meet for lunch 3 days a week. The Vice President came over. There's some very good questions that have been answered, or asked rather, of the Vice President, like what does this mean for our Kurd allies? Are we going to leave them to be massacred? What does this mean for our ability to stop Iran and the Revolutionary Guard from having unfettered access to Hezbollah in Lebanon and establishing a supply line? What does Israel think about this? Does this portend a move to withdraw troops in Afghanistan? Does this give Russia unfettered access to Syria? Look, I don't mean the questions to suggest the answers. There's a lot of blood been shed in Syria, American blood too, especially, and a lot of treasure been spent, not just in Syria, but in the Middle East. But I just don't have the answers right now. I'm waiting we'll have a briefing by the White House, by Mr. Bolton, the National Security Advisor. It'll probably be classified. I want to hear what General Mattis has to say, and I haven't made a decision about whether I think it's a good move or not. The president has talked about it, withdrawing from the Middle East for some time. I remember he talked about it in the campaign, and I've got an open mind. Now, some of my colleagues, I can tell you, they're pretty upset. That's an understatement.
Melody, did you have a question?
On the shutdown, can I just say a word about that? I was never sanguine about the possibility of getting money for the border wall. Border walls work. They're working right now in San Diego and Yuma. They're working in El Paso. They're working on the West Bank in Israel. They're working in Saudi Arabia. They're working in Bulgaria. They're working in India. They're working in Norway, and I could keep going. Border walls are very effective at stopping illegal immigration. But I was never sanguine about our chances to get any money for the border wall because of Mrs. Pelosi's stance on the issue. Mrs. Pelosi, as you know, is running for Speaker of the House. And if she gives the president 1 penny of the money he wants for the border wall, there's a pretty good chance she's not going to be Speaker of the House, because the new House of Representatives, I think it would be fair to say, is much more liberal than the current House of Representatives. And if I've learned anything in 2 years in this place, it's that the thing that most, not all, but the thing that most people up here want is to keep their job. Mrs. Pelosi is calling all of these shots. Senator Schumer, I'm not saying he's insignificant or any of that. I'm not trying to denigrate Chuck. I'm just saying on this issue, Mrs. Pelosi is calling the shots, and until she has her speakership nailed down, she's not going to do anything to upset any Democrats. So I was never sanguine that we were going to get any extra money for the border wall. I wish I didn't have to say that. I think it would be fair to say that the House and the Senate are prepared to pass what's called a continuing resolution that would keep government open, maintain status quo in spending until February 8th, including in that resolution, on the Senate side, at my insistence and the insistence of Senator Cassidy, will be a provision to keep the National Flood Insurance Program going until February 8th. I think the votes are there in the House to do the same thing. We do not have a commitment from the President that he won't veto that CR, as is his right. And the President the Vice President Pence today made no such commitment. He didn't say the President would. He didn't say the President wouldn't. So I am proceeding under the assumption that at the moment that there may well be a shutdown, and if there is, we will deal with it.
Anyone else?
Hey guys, y'all have a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and happy whatever religion you are. Hopefully I'll get to see you in Louisiana at some point between now and January 1st.